Welcome everybody to the Magical Mystery School, and thank you so much for coming back. For this is a channel where we look at the big astrological energy that's going on for the week, and hopefully do a little bit of school, a little bit of education there too. And again, thank you so much for likes, subscribes, comments, and I even love the emojis. That's great. So anyway, for this one, for this episode, we'll say welcome to the season of Sagittarius, because tonight on November 21st at 5:36 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when the sun goes into Sagittarius. And for me, that's the beginning of the holiday season, right? We're getting ready for Thanksgiving. It takes us right into Christmas. Of course, we do have to go into Capricorn, so we get a little bit more serious right around Christmas. But the build up to Christmas is really the most fun. Now, let's kind of look back a little bit. Remember, we just had that new moon, which is when the sun and the moon conjunct, just back on the night of November 19th, early morning hours of the 20th, at 28 degrees Scorpio. And that was the same day on November 20th is when, remember, we've got the sun is going forward. It hasn't made it to Sag quite yet. But then Mercury is going retrograde. So those two conjuncted, is that a word? Conjunct on November 20th. And Mercury went back this direction and the sun is headed this way towards Sagittarius. Okay. So, and also what happened on that same day was the day on November 20th when Uranus sextiled Neptune, when that perfected. Now, this is such a big, slow transit. We really think this is at least a week, maybe even a couple of weeks going and a couple of weeks leaving. And remember, we're going to have this Uranus sextile Neptune 5 times over the next 2 years. So we're going to get our fill of this for sure. But this was a really, so this is kind of like one of those base notes, like I was talking about with Uranus trine Pluto too. Really giving us a lot of support with all these changes that we're having to go through. Okay. Now, just before the sun goes into Sagittarius on the 21st, the sun is going to oppose Uranus, because Uranus is also retrograde and went back into Taurus. So right at the end of Scorpio here, like 29 degrees, we're going to get that opposition. And that is our kite. And I'm sure you guys are all like, oh, we've seen this a million times. Well, you're going to have to see it a few more times. Okay, and what's so wonderful about this kite is that even though the sun at this late degree Scorpio is activating this beautiful grand water triane that we have the water signs are Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, mutable water, cardinal water, fixed water. Sometimes we can get kind of lazy with a grand trine. So what's wonderful about having a planet here at this opposition point and when that gets stimulated is it gives us a place to focus our energy. And Uranus, the key words for that is expect the unexpected. It's the Fool card, leaping off the cliff with all the optimism of that everything's going to go well. And we need a little bit of that with this triane here. And remember too, then on today, as the sun just after it does its opposition, it's going to trine Neptune. Now it already did the trine to Saturn and Jupiter back on November 17th, not that long ago. Okay, but as far as what we're talking about in the news and out there, I think what we're still working on is when Mars and Mercury conjunct. Okay, now they did their first conjunction back here in Scorpio on October 20th, and Mars was still going direct. Mercury was still going direct, and off they went. And then on May 12th is when, November 12th is when we got the second opposition or conjunction here between Mercury. That's when Mercury was retrograde at that point, and in Sagittarius, and that's when those first three big Epstein emails came out. And oh, and I forgot to say, back on October 20th, during that first conjunction, is when Virginia Dufresne's book came out. So I think this is all about Epstein stuff. Now, because Mercury's going retrograde and going away from Mars, and Mars is actually moving pretty fast these days. I'm going to have to pull this down a little bit so we can see things better. I'll do that for next time. We are just getting tons of this Epstein stuff coming out. And I mean, and it's started in Scorpio here. So like I said, whenever I see Scorpio, and Venus is going to come up here in a minute, I just think Epstein because of the Persephone myth, right? Okay, now and what I was going to say, so the third conjunction isn't going to happen with Mercury and Mars until late January, and they're going to be way over here in Capricorn, okay, by that time. And that's making me wonder if we're not really going to get the information, or there's going to be drips and drabs are going to keep coming out. Mercury goes direct, I think it's November 29th. So then information will start coming out more and more, but I think we're not going to feel satisfied until we get to that third conjunction in January. Okay, so that'll be, I've got January 18th at 25 degrees Capricorn. All right, so the real biggie for this week to talk about is Saturn going direct on Thanksgiving Day, November 27th at 7:52 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 25 degrees Pisces. And this is a biggie, all right? Because when we think about, on that same day, on the 27th, Venus is going to be up here trine Saturn on the day that it stations direct, and making, again, this grand trine here. So we've got, that's what's so weird about what's going on right now. Yeah, there's a lot of difficulties and a lot of, Mars energy, Scorpio, a lot of nasty stuff coming out. But we've got a lot of wonderful energy to support us here. So we can't really complain too much about that. So let's talk just a little bit, though, about Saturn before we get off on the more personal stuff here. Now, Saturn is the last planet we can see with the naked eye, right? And here's the key for Saturn is the world, and you can see she's right out there at the end of the orbit there. And I shouldn't say she because some say that underneath her scarf here that she has her masculine equipment as well as her feminine equipment. So she can represent anyone, basically. So it really is our last place to manifest in the 3D world, is using Saturn. And it's a beautiful planet. It's got those beautiful rings and all that kind of stuff. And remember, it does take 28 to 30 years for it to get all the way around the zodiac. So it's not going to be here again for 30 years, that's for sure. So Saturn is known for, you've got to work hard, you've got to have discipline. Sometimes it's called the cosmic cop, because if you don't, if there is accountability with Saturn for sure. And sometimes things don't happen very quickly for you when you're having a Saturn transit. So you can kind of feel sort of depressed and, you know, because of all these delays and caution signs up and stuff. And sometimes you just feel kind of lonely too with Saturn. You can kind of be out there on your own a little bit. And it also, Saturn also tells you where your fears are, where are your little hurt spots, that sort of thing. But work with it gently. If you've got, you know, anything, well, let's first just say the water signs: Pisces, mutable water; Cancer, cardinal water; Scorpio, fixed water. If you're in those first, or the last, excuse me, like 10 degrees of that sign, because this is stationing at 25, so 20 to 30, or 0, I should say, of the next sign, you're going to be feeling this up close and personal. So if you're like, Pisces would be, you know, March 10th to the 20th. Cancer would be July 10th to the 20th if your sun sign is there. Scorpio, November 10th to 20th, you know, a few days on either side there. You're going to be feeling this very, very personal, in a supportive way, in a grounding way, an emotional intelligence way, that kind of thing with this water. Now the square, or opposition, is going to be the mutable signs. So remember, they go cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable, cardinal, fixed, mutable. So those are going to be the more difficult experiences with this Saturn stationing direct. So that would be the last 10 degrees of Sag, so December 10th through 20th, Gemini, June 10th through 20th, and then Virgo, September 10th through 20th. You're going to get the opposition. These two will get the square, which is, both of them are kind of on the difficult side. But just remember, even with those squares, if you work hard and you put your energy into it, you will reap rewards. So just keep that in mind. Because remember, that Saturn, because of its stationing, stopping, it's going to literally spend from October 15th till basically the end of December at 25 degrees. So that's why you'll be feeling it so much more distinctly, for sure. Okay, now let's talk about Saturn and Pisces in general. You know, Pisces is our most imaginative, fantasy, you know, really is very otherworldly. You know, and that's, sorry when the last time I said poor, pitiful Pisces, you know, yeah, that can be the ones that aren't so evolved, so spiritual, but work with it. And with Saturn there, bring it into the 3D. Pisces rules all forms of art, not just drawing on paper, but landscaping, singing, dancing, all sorts of, you know, any way you can express your artistic side. This is the time to go for it. Because if you don't push it out there into the 3D world, you're going to start feeling paranoid, fearful, that sort of thing. Because Pisces also rules confinement outside of society. So like going to hospitals or going to jails, that kind of thing. It opposes Virgo, the health sign here. So there could be issues there, but keep going back to your spirituality, your artistic, your fantasies, that kind of thing. But like I said, keep trying to think about them in terms of reality, okay? If you are trying to cut corners, be a con person, you could come down with a sickness or something like that. But with Saturn there, we can bring structure to this spirituality or these artistic pursuits. And what I mean by that is, you know, just simply even setting up a time to do your meditation every day, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes. That kind of structure is really going to pay off for you. And just remember too, with this Saturn and Pisces here, it's really strengthening this sextile that we were talking about last week between Uranus and Neptune. But because these three, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, the outer planets, move so slow, Saturn, once it starts its direct, it's going to be moving on and kind of be out of orb of this. So let's just look at our wobble sheet one more time here. Here we can see we're up to Saturn going direct at 2510. And then you can see Neptune will, and then Neptune goes into Aries first. But Saturn does go into Aries on February 15th. And boy, both of these going direct, but once they start going into Aries and Uranus is direct, things are going to start changing. And then finally on February 20th is when Saturn and Neptune will conjunct. And of course we'll talk about all that, but that's big stuff as far as Russia goes, as far as gun control, because Aries rules guns and that sort of thing. So I think Saturn coming into Aries may kind of put the kibosh on some of this crazy gun stuff we got going on. We don't need weapons of war, in civil society, basically. Okay, now let's talk about some of the more personal stuff. On November 21st, on the day that hopefully this gets published, we do have the Sun opposing Uranus and making this wonderful kite here. And like I said, this will give us some energy to get something going out of this beautiful grand trine here. And then the Sun will trine Neptune, so we should be connected with our spirituality. Then we have the new moon, and our Sun goes into Sag. And basically, when we've got the Sun in Scorpio, we've got more secretive things coming out. It's definitely, Scorpio is change, transformation. Can be kind of ruthless though. But remember, Scorpio, the three levels, it's the scorpion, the dove, or the eagle, and then the dove. So just remember that there's all sorts of different ways we can express this energy. And remember, Scorpio is also can be a little on the ruthless side, but loves its research, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, Sag has it all figured out, right? Ha. That's a joke. It's very straightforward, honest to a fault, honest to the oopsies, like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. It just came out. Sages love freedom, liberty, very optimistic for society. And hopefully you guys are starting to see all these signs above the horizon are more collective type energies, whereas the signs below are a little bit more personal. Sag is also very much into spiritual law and any kind of law. Sag is judges, the Supreme Court, that sort of thing. So it does respect the law quite a bit. Now, one of the bad things, besides speaking out of turn for Sag, is they can jump to conclusions. In fact, Sag is considered a very intuitive sign because their rational mind, and this is the mystery school I was brought up in, that, God gave us a rational mind to use, right? We should use it first. So look at that, to always keep that in mind with that, to think things through a little bit. And what Sag is so good at doing is connecting the dots, and like instantaneously too. So, like I said, it is considered pretty intuitive. Now, these days, I'm hearing a lot of people call themselves intuitives, whereas I think maybe a few years ago they would have called themselves psychics. So I'm not quite sure if intuitive is starting to develop a new meaning. Sagittarius is also very adventuresome. They love to travel. If they don't actually do the physical travel, they'll do it from their armchairs or watching videos, that type of thing. So, but just in general, just very adventuresome. Now, another thing too with Sag, they're not the best domestics. So if you are involved with a Sag, this isn't the kind of person that's going to keep a nice tidy house and all that kind of stuff. But yet, great companions. So they're actually fun to be around in most cases. And then, like I said, with the Sun opposed Uranus, we could have some real sudden disruptions coming out. Some ideas that are really actually pulling us into the future, because that's kind of what Uranus is. And with the opposition to the Sun, I mean, the Sun is all of our, it's illuminating, casting a light on everything. And Uranus is like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. Okay. Then on November 22nd, that'll be Saturday, Mercury down here is going to retrograde, is going to trine again Saturn and Jupiter, confirming this big, beautiful grand triane here we had. And just to remind you, so the Sun did this same thing on November 17th. And I should also mention on November 19th, Mercury was right up here opposing Uranus too. So here again, lots of disruptive information, disruptive Uranus information, mental energy, Mercury there. Okay, then on November 23rd, the Sun, just into Sagittarius, is going to sextile Pluto. And this again could be inadvertent revelations coming out. But because this is Pluto here, we can talk about deep, dark, hidden things. So this kind of energy is going to be really helpful. And remember, those sextiles are always complementary energies. So this is fire and air. They're complementary. Just like we had down here, when we have Taurus and Neptune sextiling, that's earth and water. So those are the complementary type energies. On November 24th, Mars at about 14 degrees Sag. Let's see, I think I'll put him down here then. Yeah, we can see him pretty good there. 14 degrees Sag, right smack in the middle of the sign, is going to be squaring the nodes. Now, we haven't talked about the nodes for a while, and be sure if you're curious about what they are, I call them the shadow of the moon. They're actually a place in space as opposed to a planet. They're just anyway, it's where the ecliptic and the orbit of the moon cross and such. So anyway, I have a video on that on my playlist, Astrology for Beginners. But we do have Mars squaring these. Okay, mutable earth, mutable fire, mutable water, making that square. Now, what that can come out as is that things, if you've got this personally, like some people I know, you may say things that are kind of out of the social norms. A little bit out of step. I mean, I think of that gal who shot her puppy and then wrote about it in a book. And I'm sure she thought at the time, it's like, oh, who's going to care that I shot a dog, blah. But she got a firestone in response to that. So be prepared that that kind of thing may be coming out in the public as well as in your own life too, especially if you're mid-degree Sag type person, because this is Mars, and Mars, kicks up a fuss for sure. Okay, but use this again with the nodes here to keep your actions going for what you want to manifest in the future. I know I keep saying that over and over, but it's true. This is the time that we really want to stay focused. Where do we want to be summer, Christmas of 2026, that type of thing. Also on the 24th, retrograde Mercury is going to conjunct Venus. All right. So it's going to be that same crossing point so that Venus will go ahead of Mercury after that time. And again, this is happening in Scorpio. And whenever I see Venus, Scorpio, you know, like I said, even with Pluto, it makes me think of the Persephone myth. So be prepared. I think this could be Mercury and Venus in Scorpio. It could be a lot more Epstein information coming out. Okay, then on November 26th, Venus rocks and rolls into this perfect, this grand trine. And that's the day before Thanksgiving. So people, that day before Thanksgiving and the day of Thanksgiving, this grand trine is going to be in operation for sure. So let it be peaceful. Find your pleasure. Find your balance. This is a day, turn off the TV, have fun with your family. If you don't have family around, if you decided back at the beginning of November, Mercury's retrograde, I'm not even going to hassle this travel thing. Meet with your friends or volunteer somewhere and give. Make this the 26th and the 27th really be days of quiet, peace, and enjoying it. We all need a break, right? Okay, then on Thanksgiving Day, we're going to have, Saturn is going to go direct at 25 degrees, Pisces, 9 minutes. And again, that's going to be all part of this trine again, going with the flow. So we know there's bad stuff out there. I mean, you know, Pluto always exists. But take these couple of days off for yourself. Give yourself a break. Because with this trine and these sextiles and the trine between Pluto and Uranus, things have got to work out okay. I hope, anyway. All right. So, next week on November 29th, Mercury's going to station direct. Okay, so it's stopping and going to start going forward. And on the same day is when Venus opposed Uranus. So, I'm wondering if some celebrity may come forward about this Epstein stuff that got caught up and became a celebrity later, or I don't know, something. And then on November 30th, Venus goes into Sag. Woohoo! That's when the parties will really start to begin. And trine Neptune, just like we've seen before, and sextile Pluto, which again repeats that same Persephone thing. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. And just remember, from there to here, from here to there, funny things are everywhere. Bye. See you next time.